So carrying on with Chapter 16, preparing financial statements for a corporation, we have done an income statement and we have done a statement of stockholders' equity. And let's not forget that the reason we did that statement of stockholders' equity is so that we could use the numbers for capital stock and retained earnings on the balance sheet. And we are about to prepare the balance sheet for the business that is a corporation. So, we have an adjusted trial balance here with all of our assets and liabilities on it. I didn't show equity on here because, again, the reason we do the statement of equity is to take the numbers from that, not from this. So this is the source for the other amounts on the balance sheet. And don't forget, you do have handouts that you can refer to, starting with this one. So the first section of a balance sheet is doing the current assets part. So after you do the heading, which is who, what, when, with the when being just the date, it's not for the year ended, it's just the date. So then we're going to center assets up here, and we're going to put current assets with a colon and list them all to get to total current assets. Okay, so the total's over here in the far side. Current means, if you want to note this in your thing, that we hope to convert them to cash or realize them within 1 year. So that's the accounts that are short-term or current in nature. So all of these amounts are coming from the adjusted trial balance. The only one that looks kind of weird is accounts receivable. So whenever we have a contra account related to something, so book value of AR, we need to compute that. So it's accounts receivable less the allowance. The contra account is the book value of accounts receivable, what we think we are going to collect related to that accounts receivable. And then we list the rest of the current assets. Add up all of these to get to your total current assets. Then we go to the long-term assets or plant assets section. So there's total current where we just left off. We do plant assets, colon, and the same thing is going to happen here. We need to do the book value of office equipment and store equipment. And again, as a reminder, to compute book value of a plant asset, we take the plant asset less accumulated depreciation to get to book value. And then we would add these two up to get 52,000. That's our total plant assets, and then take total current plus total plant assets, and we get total assets. So that is the asset section of the balance sheet. We just break it down into current and plant assets, add them up, that's my total assets. And if you recall, our accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity or owner's equity. That's what this balance sheet's going to show. So we're going to make sure that this total assets number equals our liabilities and equity eventually. So let's go to the liabilities section, what we owe. They're classified according to the length of time until they're due. So current, again, is within a year that we're going to pay them. And long-term is more than a year. And we won't have that section in here, but it's stuff like mortgage payable, bonds payable, long-term note payable. There's things that you'll learn in advanced accounting that go in here, but for beginning accounting, we have nothing. So that's liabilities. So our liabilities section, we're going to center the liabilities just like we did assets. And we'll start with current liabilities, colon, and we will list all of them and their related balance from the adjusted trial balance to come up to total liabilities. And that ought to say total current liabilities typically if we had long-term, but since we don't have any long-term, we just write total liabilities. And then we get to the stockholders' equity section. So just like assets and liabilities, we center this heading, and then we're going to put capital stock retained earnings. And again, those amounts 2 and 3 are coming from the statement of stockholders' equity. I would write that in my notes. That is crucial that you do not take it from the adjusted trial balance. These come from the statement of stockholders' equity. We would add those two amounts up, which also comes from the statement of stockholders' equity, and get total. And then total liabilities and stockholders' equity, I would add my total liabilities plus my stockholders' equity to get 237. And I would do a double ruling under both my total assets then and my total liability. And my accounting equation magically works. Assets equals liabilities and stockholders' equity. The most important thing we've learned from this time we started in beginning accounting was the accounting equation, and that shows to be true here. So a completed balance sheet is pretty comprehensive, but you can see it here then. So again, the heading, it's only the date. We break it down between current and long-term on assets. We only have current liabilities. The equity stuff comes from the statement of equity, and when it's all said and done, this total assets better equal my total liabilities and stockholders' equity. So that is a completed balance sheet. So then there's these other things, supporting schedules. So a report that we prepare to give more detail about a certain account or a certain item on a financial statement is called a supporting schedule, a supplementary report, or an exhibit. And things that you might have are things related to property, explaining more about what all the items are that we own of property. It may be a schedule of accounts receivable, accounts payable, who they are, those kinds of things. So just know that from a definitional standpoint. And then let's do the audit your understanding like normal. So how does 3 Green classify its assets between current and plant? So current and long term. Then what 3 items are listed on the balance sheet for an account having a related contra asset? So the balance of the actual asset, the balance of its contra, so AR, allowance for uncollectible, and then the book value, or office equipment, accumulated depreciation, book value. An example of a long-term liability is mortgage payable. And then where are the amounts obtained for the stockholders section of the balance sheet from the statement of stockholders' equity. And finally, 2 schedules that are supporting that accompany a balance sheet often are the schedule of accounts payable and the schedule of accounts receivable. So that is everything related to preparing a balance sheet for a corporation.